Hi, my name is Sean Shaler, and this is Chris Ford, aka The Objective Geek. And this week we are going to talk about episode 5 of Avatar: The Last Airbender, and it is called The King of Omashu. Chris, how you doing? How's the new job going?
Doing well. I actually did something the other day. Looked at what fiscal impact that increasing hospice rates will have on a state.
So you did an actual job thing. That's pretty exciting.
Yes, yeah.
Excellent.
And lately, I've been working on a Avatar poster, which I've been always love. Well, I've only done like two of those. Well, not Avatar, but two like poster project thingies. But it's coming along really well. I'm really enjoying it.
Did you show that in one of the episodes, or did we just talk about it prior to an episode? I think is
We
what
talked
actually
about
happened.
it because I asked you like how pretty much had you about poster composition and how I've cracked the, or not how I
The
cracked the, but I see
science,
the
the science
difference.
of movie
Yeah, the
posters.
science of movie posters. Yeah, we talked about the science of movie posters for like, I don't know, 20 minutes or something. Which I'm going to make a video on how to make posters, and I'm going to talk about the science of that we spoke about pretty much.
Well, I was thinking about you mentioned it would be fun to do. So, this leads into another topic of conversation. But you mentioned how it might be fun to do the occasional video on like one-offs, and I think that would be
Hmm.
fun as well. I think what we should maybe attempt is this is kind of on a bi-weekly schedule just by nature of being fairly busy and stuff. But maybe in those in-between weeks when we have time and we can do that extra video, that might be a good opportunity for those one-off videos, which I am totally on board with poster art. We can spend a whole episode talking about poster art. I have no issue with that. I will I will go buy a Jaws poster just to show what great poster art looks like. Still my favorite movie poster of all time.
I've
And
never seen Jaws.
I don't even know if you have to see the movie to appreciate the poster. It just looks like a
Well, no,
tremendous
you don't.
poster.
You don't have to see any movies that appreciate the posters. I mean, they help, I guess.
But
Yeah.
anyway, we got on this conversation because we recently joined a Facebook group where and it's just an Avatar: The Last Airbender Facebook group, but where people get into very detailed discussions about their thoughts and feelings,
Yeah.
and that has been
Which I do love
extremely,
it.
yeah, that has been extremely entertaining. I'm gonna say that 9 out of 10 people in that group are very enjoyable to talk to, and they take it the right way. It's a Facebook group about a
Yeah.
cartoon that we all happen to love. But then every once in a while, there's one person that like takes stuff really seriously and personally, like the fact that somebody likes Aang more than Korra has offended him or her somehow. And that's
On a metabolic level.
like it really hurts that person.
And then there's some people who know absolutely like little about it. They'll ask obvious questions. Like, why don't you just, and a lot of people's answers are just like, did you watch the show? Why don't you just watch the show? Like, what are you doing here?
You know, it's Facebook. Those people can be there.
Yeah,
That's
whatever. They want to make friends, I guess.
maybe they're just getting into it and they want some content. So like, I'm a good example
Maybe.
here because I have no outside of the show. I have no canonical knowledge. Whereas you go in here, these people are all like a living wiki of the outer canon. So it's like, all right, you know what? I go there with my show knowledge here, and they come back at me with everything else, the Chris Ford knowledge scope, which is up here somewhere. And so yeah, you go there to learn things to expand. But anyway, that's been a lot of fun. Already jumped in on a few discussions, some deep ones that we should get into someday. In one of those, like I said, I think those in between weeks, if we can get a one-off episode in between every now and then, I think that'd be a lot of fun. And then we could kind of hold to the rigid bi-weekly schedule for episodes because we got to finish
Yeah.
in 2 years or it'll be a very long time before we get to the end of Korra. But yeah, so that's been my week is playing around in Facebook on that group and watching discussions unfold. But anyway, without further ado, unless you have anything else, I do.
Nope.
I have a discussion point which I thought about saving it till the end, but it shouldn't take very long. But an example would be that the other day I heard of a fan theory that I've never heard of before. Apparently, it's fairly quote unquote prominent per the internet, but I don't really think it is because it doesn't hold up that well, and I'd never heard of it until like 2 or 3 days ago. But a fan theory that states that the avatar that we're seeing right now, like in these episodes of Avatar: The Last Airbender, is actually in sort of a post-apocalyptic state that maybe 2 or 3 avatars were cycles ago or something apocalyptic happened and we're still in the recovery phase. And the logic that they use is if you look at the technology from the first Airbender from Wan thousands and thousands of years ago, they're still using the same exact stuff right now. So somebody just essentially stated that somewhere in there was kind of a
Oh,
restart
like
of society, whereas
okay.
the technological shift from here to the Legend of Korra, like, is astounding. You know, we go from firebenders
Hmm.
having cool technology here that's still ancient feeling, but then by the time we
Yeah,
get into Korra, there's very highly advanced stuff. So
there's airplanes
there's airplanes. So yeah,
and
that's
radio.
so that was a weird fan theory that I was like, you know what, Chris is gonna have an easy way just to like debunk this. I have one more
I
thought, but
mean,
I'll let you jump in first.
okay. First, first of all, it would have to be a lot of avatars ago. Also, recently in the post I'm working on, I have like all the avatars. There's an episode of Korra, pretty much the season one finale, and it and it shows the lineage of the avatar, and it's freaking everyone. The clothing doesn't look like it's changed over all those years, and we do know that like Juan, he was the first avatar that was 10,000 years ago. That's a fact. And I don't think things have improved that much in 10,000 years. Also, there'll be some type of relics left over from it. And I'm pretty sure I probably debunk it somewhere with have to do with the lion turtles and bending. Um, but I mean, core technology and core advanced so much mostly because of war.
There is a huge technological shift in there that's kind of interesting, but I don't know that that would mean that an apocalypse or an apocalyptic event would have had to occur recently necessarily. It just like I think the best example I could think of is they always say that there's more data being created this year than every minute before this year, whatever. I forget how it goes, but essentially just the hyperbola of how things escalate and grow in that sense. But I do believe that if it was going to happen, I have a theory on a fan theory that's incorrect, anyways. If it did happen, I think it happened during Avatar. I don't know how to say his name.
Korok,
Kuruk, and so
Korok.
he was between the previous Airbender Avatar and Kyoshi. He was
Yes.
between those two,
Yep.
and it said he was kind of arrogant, and it just depends on like where you divide. Where does canon end and just stuff happening on the internet begin? But it always says that he's like arrogant and spends most of his time just having bending contests and showing off and stuff. So I was like, you know
Yep.
what? I can see him just kind of
Truth.
neglecting his duties, and maybe he didn't see that the Fire Nation over here developed like a nuclear bomb, and then everything exploded, and whatever it happened. He just didn't even notice because but that's like
I
the
mean,
only place because Kyoshi was a very good avatar, and I forget the Airbender's name before him, but that person was according
Yang
to the
Chen.
wiki, was a very successful avatar. So
Yes. When it comes to Avatar Korok, I wouldn't say he was arrogant. He was a self-proclaimed go with the flow kind of avatar. Like his wording to Aang was, "I was go with the flow avatar." There was peaceful times. People tend to solve their own problems. So I'm guessing there was no problems really to be solved. So I don't think it would have happened during that time period.
and that's coming straight out of the TV show itself, which is probably as
Yes.
close to canon as can actually exist. It literally is canon. So yeah, it's hard to argue with that. But anyway, technological shift, there is a big jump there, but I think over the grand scheme of all of humanity, we could probably say the same. Over the past
Um,
10,000 years of mankind, it probably looks pretty similar. We went
yeah,
from
I mean, look at, I
horses
mean,
300 years ago and 200 years ago to cars 100 years ago to now. I mean,
yeah, the first car was like what, 1910?
I think people were driving automated vehicles in the very late 1800s. I think.
Very
Don't
late 1800s.
Right, very
Okay.
late. Don't quote me on that, but yeah, it's close enough.
But like before that, I mean, I feel like we've been fighting with, because I mean, the Civil War was fought with guns and still muskets at that time, so people were still carrying swords.
Revolutionary War. Prior to that, that was still.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're still talking about like a 300-year scope, where an Avatar, one is 10,000 years ago, and so it's
Yes.
like we're still talking about 10,000 years of humanity to the past 2 or 300 years when everything spiked
Yeah.
up. Like maybe it's really not that big a shift. It just feels like it because it's a
Yeah.
cartoon. and because we're
Yeah.
individuals who don't live that long. We don't live as long as certain people in this episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender,
Mm.
for example. That's a terrible segue, but I'm going to go with it.
I liked it.
Actually, before we go to that though, anything you would like to clean up from last week? Any mistakes we made
I don't
or
think so.
omitted
I looked
omissions?
up I looked up the Kyoshi Warriors fighting style, and there was no specific naming of it. I think it was more so it was based off like some type of legit fan fighting style, and and their makeup and stuff was inspiration from China.
Which
I
we
forgot
just,
the
yeah,
name of
let's
it,
say we
but
didn't
yeah,
have our details quite down pat, but we were
yeah,
close. Like I
yeah.
said, it was using fans, and it was counter momentum, and that existed somewhere at some point in time. That's a real thing. Quick synopsis of the last episode was the Warriors of Kyoshi. Basically, they take a detour so that Aang can ride this giant koi, and in the process, they meet these warriors from Kyoshi Island, which is where the Avatar Kyoshi is originally from. And they kind of get hung up there, but then they find out that Aang is the Avatar. He becomes a sort of celebrity. Um, what else even happens in there? Zuko does track them down, and that's sort of the climax of the episode. Zuko tracks them down, starts burning down the village, and that's when Aang realizes that he sort of poses a threat or a cause for concern, at least, everywhere he goes, so that they need to stay on the move. So I guess in a way, Aang sort of learns of the effect of what everywhere he goes and how it's going to affect the people around him. So probably the biggest takeaway from that episode. So Zuko does catch up, lights the whole place on fire. There's a cool fight, but they do escape and they move on, which leads us to this episode, which is called "The King of Omashu," and the first scene.
Yeah, and and the backdrop. The whole reason why we're here is that Aang wants to. Well, we'll get to that. Aang wants to pretty much ride the mailing system.
That is a good point.
And so this is a
This is another detour. Just like last time, he
yeah,
really just
yes,
wanted to ride the giant koi. Here, he just wants to ride the giant slides. In my mind, when I first thought of this, I was like, it's like in Breath of the Wild when you first, not really. This isn't a spoiler. What am I talking about? When you get the paraglider and you don't really know where you want to go first, so you just have these random things in mind. Like I want to go to do the
yeah,
snowballing because
yes. That's a good point.
one of my friends told me. So you just start going places that you've heard of, and so that's what they're doing right here. I apologize for the
Yeah,
interruption. I just enjoyed that analogy.
no, it's a great analogy. Like Breath of the Wild. That's what I did when I played. I was just like, oh, I just feel like going to go do this. Like there was no urgency to go
Nick told
to
me
go
about
beat.
snow. Nick told me about snowballing. Nick Johnstone, and I was like, I got to do that first. That's the first thing I want to do. It was a bad
I don't
idea.
know what I wanted to go find the memories first because that's the thing I enjoyed a lot about the game is finding the memories because your Link, you want to get memory back and get your character back. That's going to inform the story. It's going to inform the characters. So that's what I kind of went on doing, and then I got off track doing something else, and then
Well,
I randomly stumbled upon like the fish brother guy, and I was like, who is this guy? Oh, I'm supposed to. He's like the computer help that's gonna get me to the Nets objective. Yes. Oh, in this scene, are you already about to mention it? But so we introduced Omashu. Omashu is freaking huge, very grand city. Um, and yeah, and apparently you need security to get in. Are we going to get into one of the greatest characters of Avatar, the net slide?
yes, yes, we are.
Okay.
I
He's
love this guy.
we just came from the foamy mouth guy who only makes two appearances, but Cabbage Guy. This is the first appearance of Cabbage Guy, which he's a huge influence on the Avatar universe. Like that's not even a joke. That's real.
It is. In this episode alone, he has, I believe, 3 appearances. In this episode
Yes.
alone, he is a
Yeah.
celebrity.
Rewatching it, I was like, okay, I know the Cabbage Guy shows up, but I forgot how many. Like, it is a legit running joke in this single episode that it's a running joke, but then it's a continued running joke throughout the whole entire series, the net series. Pretty much, he's trying to get in, and they're like, you can't get in with these cabbages.
So,
So they throw the cabbages just overboard and just,
so,
oh my cabbages!
So Sokka doesn't land face down in anything this episode. Nobody else lands face down in anything. This episode, the all of the slapstick humor is in the cabbages. But basically, yeah, they roll up to Omashu, this massive city. They've got some hope in their eyes and they're excited. And they see security just like kind of wipe this guy's cabbages off the side of a cliff. And he's really sad. It's my cabbages. And so at that point, they have to start scheming how to get in, which I'm actually going to go backwards a few slides just because I had a picture there. They start scheming how to get in with a
Yes,
disguise. I cannot remember what he calls himself, Mr. Papa Schnapadopoulos
it's hard to
the
say. I
third.
can't. The third.
The
Like
third!
how
But the important thing is Katara nails it right after that. Like,
she
he just makes
does.
something
Like
up, and it's
if they ever
ridiculous.
went on like a date like in the 21st century, like an improv date, like oh hey, and we should go on a date tonight. Go to the improv club. They would be great.
It would
They
be
got it.
perfect. The greatest place for them. Yeah, and great disguise, too, on Aang's part. Really pulls off that old guy very well.
You know,
So,
that's something we don't talk about that often. That they have like at least 4 or 5 disguises and aliases that they have assumed over the course of this show.
Mr. Papa Stapadopoulos the third, and yeah, it's just they're
Uh,
always very resourceful.
Fire when they go to the Fire Nation, and his name is Juan. They pretend to be Aang's parents.
I forgot about
I
that.
I can't wait to get to that one.
So, so anyway, they go in the city, and then Aang has this flashback essentially of why he brought them there.
Yeah, and this is a reason he says, my best friend Bumi, we used to, go on these slides, and I was like, so I do legit at night if I can't sleep, I try and think of ways to reboot the movie, and and like I'm not even lying. That is a fact. It helps me go to sleep at night.
I
I mean,
think
usually I don't have an issue go to sleep.
Okay, context in case you happen to be listening to this, but not the other ones. I have not seen the movie because I was expressly forbidden to by Chris, essentially. But you're gonna fix it, apparently. I
Yeah,
believe.
and
I believe your character that was going to play. I can't say it yet because I'll give away important part of the episode. I have to
okay,
come back to that later.
but essentially, I wanted them to get to Omashu. So in my head, all right, Aang would he would definitely go to the Southern Air Temple just to confirm everything, and then on the way he might just drop off at Kyoshi Island. Maybe not. Doesn't That's not as important, but I would like the Kyoshi Wars in the movie. But then he's like, I have to go to Omashu because I have to see what happened to my best friend. Like I have to see maybe he died in the war. Maybe I don't know what happened to him. I need to go see him. So that's to me would be the driving point to get them to Omashu.
I don't think that the Kyoshi Warriors would need to be in the movie in a
They
plot sense. I don't think they need
they
to be there,
wouldn't.
but you could have a very nice like nod to them, like a fan service nod, like flying over Kyoshi Island, and maybe you see a cool statue in the distance,
Yeah,
and people training on the ground or something, and it could be
yeah.
as simple as, hey, that's Kyoshi Island where Avatar Kyoshi, because it's a movie. You got 3 seasons to stuff into one movie, Chris, on a budget of
Well,
whatever you have in your bank account right now. You've got a lot of work ahead of you.
well. Also, this will cause a lot because in my head I was like, all right, season one will have to be a completely new story because they've already did it in the movie, and you gotta do somewhat of a different story. So we'll focus maybe a little bit more on Earth. I don't know, on the Kyoshi Warriors and Jet stuff like that. But then once you get past that, season two will have to be split up in two because I want it to end with wait, do I want season? I want to end with like the drill. Yes, the drill, and then maybe the second movie will be part two of book two, and that will be the Crossroads of Destiny. Or you could, because I want to go a long time without Appa. Anyway, we don't need to go through all. Now, and then book three would have to be definitely 2 movies.
I didn't
But
realize. I thought you were doing one rebooted movie. You're talking like a Harry Potter, like when Magical Beasts
yes,
came out, and we're like, hey, it's cool that they're doing this one movie for Harry Potter fans, and then I look on Wikipedia, it's like we got 5 Magical Beasts movies, which I know that's not what it is. I get it, but My point
It's
is,
at least three.
no, I believe it is. It's going to be five, but it's not magical beasts. It's going to be the progression of
Oh,
like Dumbledore and Grindelwald together,
yeah.
and they're going to have to loop a couple other things in there. But yeah, five movies. But that's my point. Is in my head it's just like this is a nice like when I've heard of that one. It's like this is a nice little like spinoff, just some fan service. That's what you just did there. It's like one movie, and you're like, all right, we're gonna focus on the Kyoshi Warriors in this movie. Hold on. Anyway, so yeah, he's got to find out what
Okay.
happens to his best friend, and then the flashback. The flashback that he has is him and his best friend Bumi going down. There's a massive mailing system in Omashu. It's a very tall city, is the best way I can think to describe it. Like it's sort of a
Mhm.
mountain almost on its own, and it's got the massive mailing system of ramps or chutes essentially. And Aang describes it as earthbending sends these carriers up, and then gravity pulls them back down with their mail and their different packages.
Yeah.
But also tremendous sleds apparently, and that's I'm trying to think of the line that Boomy says instead of seeing what they want you to
You're
see,
only you're only seeing what they want you to see.
you need to. I can't
Open
think of.
your eyes to the possibilities.
There it is, yeah, possibilities, and that's like the whole key to that flashback because it's important in the rest of the episode. Like the rest of it's
Yeah.
fun and exciting, but that's what you're supposed to take out of that flashback. So then they get into Omashu. They I love this still right here. So they get into Omashu, they ride the sleds, they cause all sorts of just havoc and destruction. They're like ruining people's houses and works of art and stealing. When's the last time you had your roof replaced, Chris? Because they ruined like five of them on their way down this hill. It's expensive. And then they destroy Cabbage Guy's cabbages again for the
Again.
second time. Well, the first time wasn't their fault. So yeah, they destroy Cabbage Guy's cabbages again.
Yeah, and it's a pretty long, extensive scene just for sledding. Like they're not even being chased by anyone
Not
at
even
this
at
point.
all.
It's just sledding and trying to maneuver in and out of it. And then yeah, they and I did like the action scene. Like they did the whole like there was a scene in there where like a Earth Kingdom general was like, "Men, you got to be prepared for anything." And then it just like it does that weird. I feel like I'm gonna call it an indie thing where it pauses on a moment.
Yeah, like just stops for a second
Yeah,
with them in this giant mail carrier, like sliding right by all these soldiers in the middle of their practice, and it just
yeah,
pauses, and then it goes again. I should have captured
yeah.
that still. That would have made perfect sense. Oops. Anyways, um,
We'll do it again.
it does have a weird way. It's a silly scene and it's a fun scene, but it does have a weird way of there's actually maybe a smidge of tension into it yet. Like you get the sense it kind of reminds you that hey, Sokka and Katara don't actually know Aang all that well yet, or like the extent of his powers and abilities, and so they probably think they're gonna die when they're going. So
Yeah,
there
yeah.
is like a at least a little bit of tension in the scene that makes it not just funny but kind of interesting as well.
Yeah.
And then his
Thing is,
Papadopoulos costume falls apart too, unfortunately.
yeah. The thing is, Aang is usually pretty. He has no regard for like danger.
But he knows his abilities, right? Like I think he probably
Exactly.
has
Yeah.
guard for actual danger, but they don't know him that
Yes.
well yet.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's probably the thing that caught my attention here is like they might actually think they're gonna die in a mail shoot.
Yeah. Because Katara says, "Aang, can't you do something?
Use your
Can't you use your
airbending. She says use
airbending?"
your
He's
airbending.
like,
Yeah,
"Yeah, good idea. We can go faster." And then just
it's a very Aang moment. So yeah, there's some trust being built or destroyed here. Built because they live, so it's built. So they get introduced to they're brought before the king, because they are in trouble, and then they're like, "What do we do with them?" And then Cabbage Guy is like, "Off with their heads, one for each cabbage lost," or something like that.
yeah. Cabbage guy is ruthless.
He's straight up gonna kill these people for ruining his cabbages. No sign of remorse. And I know it's done for comedy, but I was like, he's gonna kill them.
Yeah. Someone needs to check in on Cabbage Guy.
Oh my gosh. I love Cabbage Guy. He's the real hero here. But yeah, anyway, they're in trouble and they're brought before the king. Cabbage Guy wants their head, one for each head of cabbage. I believe that's what he says. And then, if you care to elaborate, Boomy
Uh,
says,
yeah, and the thing I love about this episode is it's the funniest episode to this point.
absolutely,
They
it
do
is
a
very
lot
funny.
of wordplay and a lot of tricking tricking Aang, and because of his misconceptions, and also tricking the audience because of their misconceptions.
Intentional
And
misdirection, sort of, yeah.
yes, which plays into the episode, into kind of the meaning behind, or the lesson that Aang should learn in this episode. And he just says, "All right, King, what is your order, my sire?" And King Boomy goes, "Throw them a feast." and and the Cabbage Guy is completely disappointed.
He's just heartbroken on the side. And
Yeah,
the soldiers look apathetic. Yeah, he does this a lot. He's
yeah,
crazy.
exactly. It does not throw them at all.
Not even a little bit. So they have a feast, and then I don't remember what the pun is, but you mentioned there's a lot of wordplay.
Yes. Oh no, I remember it. It's for some reason I will remember it my whole life. Don't know why it follows me.
As soon as you say it,
Um,
I'll probably hit myself.
yeah, but they get mad, and Sokka says, "Just let us leave." And then Boomy is chewing on a piece of greenery. He says, "Let us leave." And I don't know why, but it's so
But
just
there's a
I
pun.
found it.
There's a pun before that though. But he makes it's like a
Is there?
straight up. There is a straight up joke.
Oh,
He
oh, yeah. He because
the let us leave
Boomy
one will
says,
stick with me forever. Absolutely, and it comes back
okay.
a couple times even.
Boomy asks him where's Aang's from. Where's Mr. Papalopoulos? Where are you from? He's like, from Kangaroo Island. And he's like, Kangaroo Island? I hear it's really hopping this time of year.
It's just dead.
Yeah.
But that okay, that be
Oh, and then Sokka does crack up laughing at the joke.
yeah, it takes a minute, like it took him a minute to get it, so everybody else hates it, and then Saga cracks up. But then that does it kind of segues because it's very awkward. The whole scene's kind of awkward intentionally, but that does trigger like he's like, all right, I'm beat him off to bed, and then he stands up and he throws that chicken wing, which by the way, chicken wing's my favorite food. Don't ever throw a chicken wing unless you know it's the Avatar and he's gonna save the chicken wing. But that's what he does. He throws the chicken wing, and Aang saves it with airbending. And so essentially just to give away to the king that that he has an airbender, and there's only one of those left that we know of.
Yeah. And then he locks them up and he says, "Send them to." I don't remember. It was complicated, but it's funny. He's like,
Throw them in the dungeon, and then the guard says the old chamber or the new chamber, and then he says the newly refurbished chamber that, and it goes on kind of a while, but eventually
and he
he's
says,
like,
"Throw them." Yeah.
no, you go ahead, I want to hear the impression, I'm
And he goes,
excited.
"Throw them in the old chamber that is now the newly refurbished chamber." And then, like the comedy in this episode, I just find really great. Like it's a weird, like I don't know.
It's very
I want to say
goofy.
it's like
Like it's
Monty
not
Python, but
clever, but
actually
it's
funny.
goofy. Yeah, Monty Python's probably good. Like, yeah, goofy. It's not great or super clever or anything. It's just goofy,
Yeah.
and mostly based on language. And then they get to this chamber,
Yes, they get to the
and then Katara's like, "This is really nice."
yeah. Well, he did say it was newly furbished.
And it's dumb, but I love it. It's great. I think Monty Python's a great comparison. Like I said, there's not really like any depth to it. It's just goofy fun, and definitely the most fun we've had in that sense to this point in the series.
Yes.
So then they're in the cells. They try to find an escape, but there is none. So then they convince Aang to rest. So he lays down. He
Well, he
goes to
tries to
sleep.
shove, like they're all full, and he tries to shove Momo into a vent, and Momo is just not. He
And then
does,
he can't get out, and they just leave him in
yeah.
there. Like they never address it. He's just in there, and they never come back to him or anything. He's just stuck in there, struggling. He's like struggling visibly, and they just leave it. That's fine, whatever. Um, Yeah, and then they go to sleep, and then Aang is awoken, and he is treated to an alarm clock in the form of a guard, essentially.
Yes, and then pretty much says that Bumi will have tests for him, and yeah, he kind of starts these three trials.
So the first one here, when he wakes up and he walks out with the guard, and the king is like, "All right, the first challenge or the first test. What do you think of my
Oh,
outfit?"
damn, sorry.
And he's like, "What do you think of my outfit?" And Aang's like, "It's all right, I guess." And he's like, "You passed." He's like, "I did." And he's like, "Well, that's not one of the deadly challenges." So there again, just another piece of quick, quirky humor. It doesn't really mean or add anything. It's fun. But then we get to the actual first deadly challenge.
Yeah, Aang has to get a key because King Bumi needs it for his lunchbox, and it's like just the reasoning is really silly.
Fits right in
But
line.
yeah, and Aang finds a way. He throws like one of these spear thingies in with the air bending. Because you see it, you think you got to walk. The key is like being drowned by this huge water stream, and you think that oh yeah, you just got to be strong enough to go up it.
Up the
But
ladder. Up the
no,
ladder.
yeah, but
Yeah.
no, you got to be smarter than that or more creative than that. You got to throw like the freaking spear rock thingy at it to get the key.
Uh, I should have captured that as the still here, but I really like this still because, like, Aang, there again, he's legit about to die. Like, that thing looks like it's real close to all of his stuff, and he's
The
gonna.
future of Air Nation.
All of his. All of the Air Nation is at stake right here, and it's awful close. So I should have captured that, but this part made me laugh. All right, so he finds a creative way to get this key, which is at the top of a waterfall that's just pouring over the key and the ladder. But he gets creative, gets it back, and then he gets to the second challenge, which is my favorite, where
Yeah,
how does the king is like, "I've lost my dear pet Flopsy," and then he's in this arena, and there's this tiny little bunny, and he starts chasing it around.
yeah. So he chases around thinking that Flopsy, the is the bunny. So he chases around. He's also getting chased around by this huge freaking monster. And then he figures out like, oh, Flopsy, and the animal completely stops in front of him and gives him a nice lick.
Just picks him up, gives him a big hug. I
Yeah,
like that when it happens too. He's like arm deep in this rabbit hole, like trying to grab this original rabbit, and this giant monster's closing in on him, and he's like, "Hold on, Flopsy!" Like it just let's give it a shot. Maybe it'll work, and it did.
yeah,
So yeah, Flopsy is a giant rabbit dog thing. They never really say what he is, which is sad. We haven't touched on it a lot yet, but in the series, there's so many animal
I,
combinations,
yeah.
and it would have been nice to hear like, is he rabbit bear, rabbit wolverine, rabbit something? But whatever, he's a giant rabbit thing.
I don't know. I'll have to look it up.
It looks pretty vicious. Oh, that was another part of the apocalypse theory. Is that that's how all these animals, all these two animal types got like melded together and things like that was because of an
Yeah, but that's been the
apocalyptic event.
case. That's been the case forever, though.
Right, I was like,
You go
there
back
was
and watch.
literally a giant lion turtle at the beginning of time,
Yes,
so that part doesn't hold up at all. But anyway,
who is God,
the
essentially.
god lion
Yeah.
turtle. So yeah, there was already blending well before whatever apocalypse could have happened.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's why he made animals that way. He made animals in his image.
they all got to be two things. But he's like, God, that doesn't even exist yet. I don't care. Find two things and then put them together. That's the Avatar creation story in a nutshell.
Yeah.
That brings us to the third and final challenge, which is obviously actually the best and most important one.
Yeah, which I do love. I love the setup. It's like, all right, uh, choose a fighter, and it comes out with one guy and looks really bad and tough. Other guy looks really bad and tough, and Aang is like, so I just have to point and choose? Like, yes.
So he's got one
And
tough
then you
guy on each
think,
side of him.
yeah, and you think Aang finally cracked the code of like, all right, I gotta think differently. And then he chooses Boomy, thinking he's an old frail man. And then I love the way Boomy like I don't know, he just kind of gathers himself up. Like he goes from being this hunched,
He straight up goes
this
Transformer on it. Like he
pretty much like his back does this whole like straightened out thing. Um,
I'm telling you, like I literally the first time I saw that, and I remember to this day, I was like, it was even like Transformer style cutscenes. Like first they show the knuckles, right? They like crack, and
Yes,
his
yeah.
hands like get stronger, and then his back straightens up, and then his clothes tear off. It's like just
He
straight up
says,
as a Transformer.
yeah, and he
So
just says, "Wrong choice. You're looking at the strongest Earthbender in the world."
played by Morgan Freeman in the Chris Ford
Yes,
reproduction, which I'm
yes,
totally okay with. I think that's a great choice. Um, it is important that he does say it is important. He says the strongest Earthbender you have ever
yeah,
seen. Like it's sort of very deliberately worded, and that becomes important later on, probably, at least in my opinion. But yeah,
yeah,
so he picks Boomy, and Boomy's like wrong choice, and Aang just straight up like, oh, I thought I had it. Like you mentioned, he thought he cracked the
yeah.
code.
And
He
then he
did.
goes, he
He did
like,
not.
can I choose the other guy?
The
And like,
axe guy
in my
again.
kingdom, there are no takes backsies.
No, I forgot that too.
Like, I'm sure that's like an actual rule in his kingdom.
It's on a stone tablet somewhere. There
Yes,
are
it's
no
on a
takesies
stone.
backsies.
No takes backsies.
Oh, it's great. So then they proceed to this. It's maybe I might be going a little too far here, but it's probably my favorite one-on-one battle so far. It's not an Agni Kai because it's not Fire Nation people,
Hmm.
but in terms of one-on-one battles, it's probably my favorite so far because of sort of the diversity and the scope of things that happen. Like to this point, we've seen some cool firebending, sort of martial art firebending style moves. Boomy literally is like tearing, like at one point he tears out a chunk. It's kind of towards the end. He's like got a tornado blowing, going crazy, just destroying the whole arena. He tears out a chunk of the arena and hurls it at Aang. Like we're not talking about pieces of fire. He's like hurling massive boulders and things like this. So it's my favorite fight to this point in the series because so many bigger, just more exciting things seem to happen all in a short span of time. It's a very exciting
Yeah.
fight.
And one thing we haven't mentioned yet is that Katara and Sokka are locked in some type of rock
We haven't
encasing thing
mentioned
that
that.
grows.
Genomite, I
And,
believe, is what it's
yeah,
called. Genomite
and
rings.
that's why Aang has to do these trials to save them. But yeah, this is probably definitely also my favorite fight to this point. Also, this is our first time we're really seeing Earthbender fight. So we've seen
In the
air.
whole episode,
Um,
or in the whole series, it's the first time I think we've
yes,
seen
yeah,
Earthbending. Yeah,
first time. And it's a great introduction to it for several reasons. One thing is just you can see the clear contrast that earthbending has. Like earthbending is freaking strong and powerful, while firebending is a little bit more longer attacks. And
maybe
airbending
kind of
is
an
all about
agility
kind
and
of,
everything. Oh, and then airbending
yeah,
is for sure more of I think I probably said this more.
evasive maneuvers.
Very,
While
very defensive.
earthbending has a very strong defense, has a strong offense, and also this is one of those episodes where I think the fighting styles show a very clear difference between each other. Like Bumi's fighting styles are so freaking different. Like he's so rooted to the ground, and he does a lot of kicks and a lot of leg movement. And if you ever watched the making of like while Sifu Kisu, who's the martial arts consultant for the show, like the movements he does looks like they just took that and put it on the show because it's so close to it.
I do think it sets a really like a very impossibly high standard for earthbending because like the first waterbending we see, just Katara. First airbending we
Yeah,
see is Aang doing tricks and gimmicky type stuff. First firebending is Isuko's training, which that escalates really quickly for sure. Earthbending, we see some male things going up and down chutes, and you're like, all right, whatever. And then you see this, which, like I said, we just both said favorite fight to this point because so many crazy things are happening. Um, he's like the Ray Lewis Ravens team that won the Super Bowl. Man, he's good defense, ram it down your throat on offense. Like he's just it's very what's the word? It's not particularly. I wish there was a Yu-Gi-Oh comparison. Like it's just a pound of high defense, high offense, no trickery.
yeah, and there's no finesse.
Thank you,
I mean,
finesse. That's
earthbending
the word.
is
Yeah,
blunt, it's straightforward,
it's just gonna
um,
just gonna
and
hit you in the mouth with it. Uh,
yeah,
So the Genomite rings, that's a good thing we probably should have hit on earlier, though, is basically Bumi has given him Katara and Sokka these rings that are slowly growing. It's crystallizing very quickly, growing very fast, and it's just going to encapsulate them in, I think he said 12 hours or something, unless Aang takes these challenges. So that's his motivation here. He's not just passing the time.
Yeah.
Um,
And another thing in the fight is that you kind of learn the shortcomings of airbending. Like the way Aang is using looks like it's completely useless against King Bumi. Like air does not beat Earth oftentimes. So much so that when Aang blows like a huge breeze towards him and Boom just puts up a huge wall, he's like, ah, it's kind of windy in here. Are you trying to give me a cold? and then and then uh and then like all Aang's direct air attacks do nothing for him. He pretty much had to throw a block back at Boomy using air bending.
he very
But it's
much
just
had
great
to
to see.
resort to counters to win the
Yeah.
fight. Yeah, and there's that one point Boomy does a fair amount of trash talking, in the sense of like right off the bat he's like, ah, typical Airbender maneuvers like running and
hmm
hiding. And I don't remember if he says it, but there's at least that implication of like you can't win this way. I don't think he says anything directly like that, but he's like that feeling that you can't win with regular airbending. You're gonna have to think outside the
Yeah.
box, or you're gonna have to open your eyes to possibilities. So, yeah, in the end, he kind of distracts Boomy by flinging one of his own massive boulders back at him.
hmm
And then he splits it, but then Aang's sort of right behind it, almost the same way as when he threw the spear through the waterfall and then used air to split the waterfall, kind of. So he flings this boulder, and then he's right behind this boulder. So when Boomy splits it, he's right there.
Yeah. Yeah. And then before we get to that part, he beats. Well, he doesn't necessarily beat Boomy, but he
A draw, maybe.
it's a
They're both
draw.
trapped
Yeah,
under a
it's a
boulder
draw.
as
Yeah.
he's,
It's a no-win situation. And Boomy just, I love the way he earth bends into the ground. It's like here's Boomy, he's just like, and then he just twirls back up somewhere else.
just
I
straight
just
up
love this.
moleholes.
Like I said, it's a great introduction to earth bending.
And it's very
And then he says, "All right, your
artistic. It's
final
very creative
test."
earthbending.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, especially if you compare it to like if you ever watched Teen Titans, um, like they have a character named Tara who is essentially an earthbender before earthbending was a thing. But she just moves rocks. Like she can control rocks, but she just
Excuse me.
essentially throws them. And that's not nearly as cool as earthbending is in the show.
She's just picking up rocks and throwing. That's
Yeah,
barely a superpower.
I did that when I was 7 years old. Hit a kid in the eye.
didn't didn't run inside like, Mom, I'm an
Yeah,
earthbender, and you're just throwing rocks.
yeah,
She's not gonna buy that.
yeah.
So there is one more test, and it is a not deadly test. Basically, Boomy, who at this point we don't know is Boomy yet, but he just says, what's my name or something like that, and
Yeah.
then this is like my least favorite part of the episode, honestly, because there's not
Really? That's one of my favorite parts of the episode.
there.
I mean,
Well,
I guess not one of my favorite, but I like this part of the episode.
there's not much trigger for it. Like he's just kind of thinking, and then I don't know. It just doesn't seem like there's
I
really good
get that.
trigger. And then at some point, he's just like, "Oh, I just got to think about I can't see things the way I'm supposed to see
Yeah,
them. I got to open my mind to the possibilities." Like it just kind of hits him, with
yeah. You
not
would
a
have.
whole lot of build up. I wanted something
Yeah.
to kind of trigger like him to see something kind of tangible, or I
hmm
don't. It just felt like it came on kind of strange, especially coming down from a really big, exciting fight.
Yeah. I get that critique of it. But I do love the part of like him being like I do love the part of them embracing because
Yeah,
this is Aang's long lost friend. He says,
his best
and
friend. I think
Boomy's
he comes out and says
yeah,
best friend. Even yeah.
yeah, it's his best friend. Um, and they show that through even through the next season of the show. And they do this great hug, and he says, it's nice to see you, Aang, and like that welcoming that he gives him is it feels like a legit welcoming. Like it's nice to see my old friend who I thought was freaking dead,
It was 100
for
years ago. That guy's old as snot,
yeah,
man. He is at
yeah,
least
he's
110.
110, 112, probably Aang the same age.
I'd think so. Yeah. So it's a really old friend, but I think he looks older than Yang personally. But so they do
Yeah,
hug. and that's really cool. And it is very touching. Very connected with Aang there. But then, more importantly, is Qatar and Sokka in the background. I forget what one of them says, like something on the order of "Hello, don't forget about us," whatever. And so then Boomy goes over there
Screw
and he
you
just
guys, I got my real old friend here.
we're having a moment. But then Boomy goes over there and just breaks off a chunk of the Genomite. And it's like, Genomite's also known as rock candy. And he just
Yeah.
starts eating it. It's like, oh,
Nom, 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 nom,
that would have
nom.
pissed me off if I had known this whole time. So that's good too. It just kind of ends on a note that's sort of a microcosm of the whole episode. Like it kind of ends on a goofy, happy note, and that makes you feel pretty good. So,
Yeah.
all in
Yeah, and
all,
one of the things
very
I love
satisfying.
about this episode is that the first couple like 5 episodes gives you a constant reminder of the situation and what's going on. And this one, like the last one was, all right, here's Kyoshi. She was the avatar before Aang. She was one of the avatars before Aang. Here's another reminder that Aang is actually really, really old. You see a flashback of him with his best friend, and now you see a current day of him with his old man who is that same best friend. It just shows a physical representation of a visual representation of just how much time has gone on. That like Aang would be looking that old or dead by now if that much time has not passed. So I always liked that. That was it was a good reminder of just the situations of the show that was happening.
That's an excellent point too. That probably two other times that it kind of gets alluded to, maybe in a good way of sort of putting the viewers into some context. Is first of all right at the beginning of the scene where they find out that Aang is the Avatar, and he's like, "Yep, just doing my Avatar duties and making sure there's peace and everything." And then he like
Yeah,
lifts up the. It's not even a tablecloth; it's just a runner, like it's the strip of cloth. And he like
yeah,
lifts it up. He's like, "Everything checks out here. So love each other and be nice, and we'll see you later." It's trying to make a getaway. Up and it there again, it's goofy and silly, but it just is a little like, hey, yeah, just doing my avatar duties because that's what I do. And then at the end, they touch on that again when Boomy just kind of straightforward says your duty as the avatar is to defeat Fire Lord
hmm
Ozai. And, like just straight, and that's the first time we hear it so bluntly.
exactly. Yeah, great. Yeah, I meant to bring that up. I mean, he is, which is why I want him in this fake movie that I'm making.
He's got to be there. It's
Because
such an important part of character exhibition for us, or plot
yeah, I
exhibition
mean,
even.
he can deliver the exposition in a great way. Like, Aang, you've been missing for 100 years.
You have to do
Like,
that in a
you're going to
Morgan
have to face
Freeman
the fire. And
voice.
yeah. Oh, am I just an Aang?
You
You've
have
been
to defeat
missing
Fire Lord Ozai. I
for a
can't.
hundred years. Well, I got to put more of a boomy spin on it. Aang, you have been missing. No, that's more. For 100 years. You have to face the Fire Lord, and you have to master water, earth, and fire.
When you said water, you had
Can
me
you do?
there. That was good. That was good water.
Yeah, felt good.
It made me think. He says when he says "tall drink of water" in Shawshank Redemption, that word was a
Yeah.
perfect 1-to-1.
But it's hard to like mesh Boomy and Morgan Freeman and trying to impersonate both of
I
them because
think
like Boomy has such a crazy, like you hear the craziness in his tone. But essentially, so yeah, so he sets up the goal. Like this is the first time we have a long term goal. Like how is the show going to end? Like before this, I think the Fire Lord was an afterthought really, because mostly you focus on Zuko
we barely had even
and
heard anything about the Avatar. I mean, a snippet.
yeah, and so now Boomy's setting up the stakes. He's like, all right, you got to this is what you got to do, eh? You got to go learn waterbending. You have to go then learn Earth. Then you got to learn Fire. Only then can you defeat the Fire Lord? And you have to defeat the Fire Lord because that's the only way to stop the war. So yeah, now we have our mission statement.
That's that is our team. That is our team vision, team mission statement. Yeah, and like I said, it's a small piece that a younger me, or at least the first time I'm watching through, maybe it's just a trigger of like, oh yeah, that's Zuko's dad. But now that we're watching it again, it's like that really is the first time where it's spelled out for us so literally. Even if we know it,
hmm
just to have a character say it so bluntly, it's I don't know, it's kind of refreshing in a way to like, oh, all right, we went from in our Breath of the Wild allegory, we went from flying around wherever to all right, you got to go do these separate
Yeah.
individual things, and
Yes.
then go get the Fire Lord. So
Yeah,
got
and I
got some
think at this
direction now.
point, Aang pretty much is done. He doesn't do any more of that weird like,
No
all right, I
tourist
gotta go
attractions
here because
anymore.
yeah, there's no more tourism with Aang.
I think so. I can't really remember what the next episode is, but I think we're getting to the point where we're about to go on some mission here. We're about to do some
Oh
story
gosh, is
driving
it the
stuff.
Great Divide?
I don't recall. So this one started a new disc. So when I watched the first
It
disc, I
did.
just burned. I watched all four of them. This one, I literally just watched this episode. I didn't watch the other four yet, so I need to marathon through it. That brings me to a segue. We have a very unusual sponsor this week. Very different sponsor. Calling them commercials. It's really just when I talk about something that I want to talk about, and there's no other place to put it. But so I stumbled on this game on the internets, and it is called Gormiti, and so it is based off an Italian cartoon, and yeah, it's probably hard for you to. Chris is looking on
No,
his
I
phone,
can
so he's
see.
got a very limited screen to work with. And so what this is in video games, there are
The
so many
Lords of Nature.
examples of teams using the elements to fight evil. Right, that's a very common trope. And it's always four elements too. It's like four crystals of the
Yeah,
elements in Final Fantasy, four keys of the elements. Blah blah blah. Like there's always four elements. So this
I
is
like
just
four.
four is a good number. This is just an example of that in sort of modern. But I guess what I liked about it is it sort of seemed catered to about maybe the same ish age group, like maybe a slightly younger age group that we would find for Avatar: The Last Airbender. And then I also liked it because it was just sort of panned, sort of universally on the internet. Like everybody hated it, but I just stumbled onto it in a separate video, totally unrelated to anything related to Avatar. I was just watching it work, and I was like, first of all, that seems to resemble Avatar in sort of story-ish setting and age group. And second of all, it looks really fun. Like I wanted to go buy it. Even it's just panned and hated all over the internet. So I do have a video here. So here's the gameplay, and as you can see, there's the dark brown guy there. He's Earth, and then there's forest, water, and air, which is a little weird to have forest as one of the powers, especially when you already have Earth and water. More of an electricity guy myself, big fan of Pikachu, but it just looked like my level of depth of a video game. Like I like very superficial. I don't like a lot of hiddens and complications. I like straightforward beat 'em ups, action platformers, that kind of thing.
Yeah. But then people think about, oh well, what about like plants and stuff? And I think plants are unable to be bend with themselves because plants is a living thing. Like they're living and they're spiritual. Like they are part of the planet. You can't, like, it almost seems taboo or unnatural to bend something that has life in it. And I think in the world of Avatar, that would make sense that no, you can't just like move plants, you can't move wood.
Anyway, looks like a fun game, I thought, and it's universally hated, so it's not very expensive. Try to play it someday. And it is called
Nice.
Gormiti, Lords of Nature. It's based on an Italian cartoon. I have no idea why it was released in the United
Comedi,
States. Yeah, go.
comedi. That's how you
Exactly.
gotta pronounce it. Comedi, the Lords of Nature.
Say it
It's a
out.
me, the Mario. I thought I was on the Italian video
It's a
game
me,
about.
Gormiti.
It's
Um,
me.
it it is weird that it ever came over here though. Like, why would Konami bring this Italian cartoon to the Nintendo Wii in America? But whatever, that's what we're meeting, and that's my commercial break for the day, which leads us into ratings, and I will go first because my ratings are uneducated and usually very emotionally based. So my first one, audiovisual, I gave it an 8. A lot of the there's no like grand musical scores here, but there's a lot of different percussive music when they're in the shoots, when Aang is in the battles or during the trials. There's a lot of interesting percussive music. The picture of Omashu itself is very impressive. There's not a lot of like really exciting color palettes or individual moments or anything like that, but everything always just looks very exciting. It's a lot of new things we haven't seen before, and like I said, there's interesting enough music that's unique to this episode throughout. So I gave it an 8. Nothing amazing, but definitely worthwhile. Story, I wanted this to be higher, like in my heart. I really wanted this to be more and more exciting. It does stand on its own as kind of an interesting story, but in the grand scheme of things, again, I think we said this last episode, it's not a narrative driver really. It's more important than the last episode in Kyoshi. There's more narrative driving plot points than that episode, but it's still just kind of a pit stop. And you mentioned it might be
Hmm.
the last one of its kind at this point. Um, but it does still stand on its own, at least as an interesting episode by itself, even if it's not a great typical story. I love the ending where he realizes it's Boomy. I love the challenges. I love seeing the big picture of Omashu and this new kind of bending and this new sort of a new type of person. They're training their soldiers to go off to war. So far, we've just seen isolationists for the most part, or people that were trying to avoid the war as much as possible. And here we're talking about a group of people going to war. So not only is there story, but there's more context and exposition that I really like. So it stands on its own as very interesting, even if it is just a pit stop. So that's where I give it an 8. However, it's one of my favorite episodes of all time, and I remember so much about it. The lettuce leaf, the cabbage guy, the challenges, Boomy, Flopsy, Mr. Papaganopoulos the third. Like, there's so many pieces of it that just resonate with me as a guy who enjoys corny humor. So I gave this one a very generous 9.5 on
Hmm.
memorability because it will always stick in my mind. Anytime somebody says Avatar The Last Airbender, this is probably the earliest episode that I remember first. It's maybe not the episode on top of my head all the time, but when I think of like book one water episodes, this is probably the first one I think of. And that rounds out to like an 8.45, I believe, which is an 8.5 because I don't like decimals. And now to yours.
All right. On to audiovisual. Give it an 8 out of 10. Um, there's some parts that I thought the animation wasn't that great, and just when the first, like when they first get up to the wall and they meet that guard, some of the animation I just didn't jive with me. Maybe because I watched it on my DVD that I just got because I wanted to see if it had commentary on it, and I
You
think
lost
I'm
some
going
Blu-ray
crazy
quality. By the way, yeah, you're nuts.
yeah,
I looked on mine and there's no commentary here.
I
You've
I
invented
need to get.
seasons worth of commentary in your subconscious.
Okay, what if this is true and that because I legit remember watching the entire series. Maybe it doesn't start until season 2 with commentary on.
Maybe that could be possible. Maybe there's just a few
I
episode skips here at the end. That's because why would
yeah,
you?
because I remember things about certain episodes. The thing is that it's not,
You're
and they weren't.
insane,
I'm
and I'm
insane,
laughing at you. That's great. I'm sorry to laugh at your troubles.
but like I would just change the audio setting on there because it'll go from English to Spanish to French to English 2, which had commentary. And that's how I would always get to them. Like I wouldn't go to special features commentary here. I would just press the subtitle, the audio button, and get there. Um, and so yeah, so I've been taking. I bought this. I have for backstory. I had the whole entire series on bootleg DVD. Maybe I have some golden bootleg DVD that had commentary on each episode. I don't know. Weird. And then I gave
You
those
gotta
away
find
because I
the
bought the
original
Blu-ray.
owner of that real DVD.
Yeah. Or I can just get the guy I lent it to mail it back to me, but that seems like a lot of work
Very
because he moved to the other side of the country. Uh,
just to take the DVDs with him so he could know he knew the secret
yeah.
of the DVDs, the golden ticket that would let you get into Viacom Studios for a day.
Yeah. And then I bought the Blu-ray because thinking like, oh well, the Blu-ray has everything that the DVDs have, and then didn't have commentary on those. So then I bought Book One DVD again, the actual copy of it. I just bought like a $5 used copy on eBay. They did not have it anyway. So it could have been the DVD quality, just putting down the audiovisual. But I did love,
I think there could be some validity to the idea that maybe it doesn't start till the second season. Um, I don't know. I could see that being the case, but
uh,
for those who have not watched both, I have seen enough of the Blu-ray versus the DVD. It is. I don't always say this. Like you're talking about a guy that still plays really old video games on CRTs for fun. There's a very noticeable difference in just the smoothness of the animation in
yeah,
this case. And I watch the DVDs. These screen captures are from the DVDs, and it's probably noticeable even to that extent.
Yeah. But on audiovisual, I enjoyed the fight a lot. That's the most audiovisual thing I did enjoy. The little chase or the sliding thing was okay. But I did really enjoy the fight just because I think they got the nuances of the Hungar Tiger Crane fighting style very well.
Can you repeat
So give that eight.
Hungar Tiger Crane fighting style? And
Yes,
that's
that's what
specific to Boomy or to most
it's
airbenders?
specific to most Earthbenders.
Or sorry, I said
Toph uses a praying mantis style, which is different. But other than that, they all use most of them, pretty much all of them use the Hungar Tiger Crane. I
interesting.
believe I'm pronouncing that right. But on story, gave that an 8 also. Because, like, the characters don't really move anywhere. But, like you mentioned, at the end of it, we do get a new goal for the entire series, really, is because we know Aang has to learn all three elements and he has to defeat the Fire Lord. So that was kind of a big, quick exposition piece. And like I said
All
before, I
at the
also
end
love that,
too. Up to that point in the episode, maybe not as much. Like all that happens at the very end, kind of. But it sets us off in
yeah,
a real direction.
yeah. And then I also really enjoy that it's another reminder of the situation that Aang is really 112 years old. This was his best friend, um, and his best friend has aged this much just to show how, this is just representation of how long the war has been going on. So I give it an 8 out of 10. And on to memorable, gave it an 8.5 because this is, I don't know how it ranks as one of the funniest episodes. I mean, there's other episodes that I find funnier, but this is it's probably a top 5 funny episode. So for that, it's really good on the memorable side. And I always did just like that embrace that Boomy gives thing. And also, I really like crazy old people. Um, like I don't know why. I think it's my I kind of I mean I like crazy people, and then crazy old people is even better. Maybe it reminds me of my grandma. I don't know. But if you have a crazy old person in anything, it's always good. I've never in
there,
any show, crazy old people are always great characters.
there would be nothing more appropriate than if your grandma just happened to A, watch this episode, and B, the next time she sees you, she just throws a cabbage at you in anger. Like
Yeah,
that would be like a full circle
yeah.
of this conversation in this episode. Got to be cabbage.
Well,
Oh, yeah. Overall score
8.1
it was like
out of 10.
8.05 or something like that. It was very.
Huh.
Um, we are very close on everything. I put more on the memorable, and my memorable is weighted heavier. That's most of the difference, and it's
Hmm.
easy to understand because I tend to be a fan of pretty lighthearted, goofy comedy and goofy things, lighthearted side of stuff. So, uh, pretty reasonable. And then that led to an 8.3 score overall, which I think that fits. It's probably the second highest one we've had so far.
Yeah, I'm sure the pilot was higher.
And
So
I
far, we've
mean,
only done the
just
pilot and Warriors of Kyoshi and this one, right?
there's one more in there that we're forgetting about in there
Yeah,
because this is
yeah,
episode
for sure.
five, and so we've done
Yeah, you're
four
right. You're right. Southern Air Temple.
Southern Air Temple. I think this is the second highest one, which in my head it seems to fit. It's certainly the probably the most
Yeah.
exciting one to date, at least. So yeah, eight
So
point
far, they've
three.
all been. Yeah, so far they've all been good. I think the last one we gave like a 7.9.
Yeah, and if I had to go
Right?
back, I don't. I think I would rate it differently, and I don't know how. But the more I think about that episode, the less I care for it. Not that it's bad. It
Yeah.
doesn't have as much bearing on the rest of the series as the other episodes at this point. But
No, it doesn't. But,
what's past is past.
yeah.
And yeah, it was a really good episode. I loved it. It will probably be among my highest throughout most of the series.
I can't wait to. That's how much of a nerd I am with like analysis and just also a geek in this stuff. So I can't wait till we're all done so I can run all the numbers and see and see how like maybe it was trending episode over episode see what top five of each category it is, the low five.
My prediction is that you and I will get slightly more and more critical as time goes on, just because we will have sort of seen everything, so to speak. Our
Hmm.
expectations will grow or be set at a certain place. Like I think you kind of grow more cynical with time, like just people and humanity in general. So I think that
Yeah,
our ratings will gradually become maybe more critical, but that in a good way, or if there's a good thing about it, those standout episodes that are in these middle and later seasons, the second and third season, those really standout episodes, I think they're going to stick out more in a good way. So there's probably some
yeah.
good to come from that.
And I think there's some bad episodes coming up. Well, I don't want to say there's one bad episode really coming up, and I almost feel like we can just do like we don't have to cover that one as in deep detail, and
Yes.
maybe push another episode in there or something, or I don't know, or
Maybe that'll
we
be
can
one
have
where
another discussion.
I was gonna
Yeah,
say let's do maybe we'll just split that up into we'll do like a short discussion of the episode and then a long discussion of whatever insane fan theories or whatever good stuff the Facebook group cooks up at that point in time. That'd be a good one.
yeah.
I don't know what episode you're talking about. Don't spoil it. I'm gonna look at the back of
Okay.
my I'm gonna look at the back of my cardboard box and see if I can recall which one you're talking about. Um,
And you will know it when you see it.
Most likely, and I will most likely agree and hate it. But that day I'll try really hard to be positive. But anyway, yeah, closing thoughts. This episode has a way different vibe than any other episode we've had so far. Especially the past episodes, everything's always struck me as like, oh, the theme to this one is revelation, and the theme to this one is such and such. This one, the theme is just you just kind of chuckle, and it's a feel good story. It has a happy ending.
Yeah,
It's funny the whole way through. Just makes you feel good. That's good.
yeah.
I like that. So,
Yeah. One thing
um,
we didn't touch on is the color palette. As I can tell in this one, in this image you have up, is that it's Earth Kingdom is definitely green. That's their green and yellow is their
greens
color scheme.
and there's in this episode in particular there's a lot of very the greens like this are tend to be very bright or at least what's the word like good strong greens. A lot of the
Vibrant.
browns had vibrant, thank you, that's a good word. A lot of the browns felt much flatter to me, like kind of just a more
Mm.
of an afterthought of a brown, if there is such a thing. Like they just didn't like. I liked the green scenes much better than when they're outside and there's just kind of these tan and light brown mixtures that none of it popped very
Yeah, I
well.
understand. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. So vibrant, strong colors, greens, especially in book two. I think there's a lot of those where you get kind of used to this green scenery popping up over and over and over and over again. But different topic for
Yeah.
a different day. So okay,
But
that's
no,
what I got.
I really like the episode. It's a very enjoyable episode because
Definitely.
you don't have to pay too much attention to plot. I mean, I was watching with my daughter, and we both enjoyed it. I know what her
There's
favorite
nothing real
episode is,
deep.
but
Yeah, there's nothing real deep going on
yeah,
here. But it does, like I said, no episode at this point has made me laugh or feel so good at the end of it. So big
yeah,
win. Yeah, my dog's asleep, so I assume it's past my bedtime as well. And uh, next week's a little crazy, but I do think it'd be a good idea to fit in like a one-off discussion at some point. That sounds like a lot of fun. So if any debates pop to your mind in particular,
I
uh,
have two in mind.
excellent. Do you want to
One that we
preview or do you want
disagree on,
to
apparently.
do?
Yeah, sure. Let's preview
Let's
it.
preview it.
Because the most recent conversation that I brought up on the Facebook group was because someone had brought up like, oh, Aang versus Korra, who would win? And then like seeing all the response to that, like a lot of 80% of them said Aang, and in my head I'm like that doesn't make any sense. What like why? So then I posted like why would anyone logically choose Korra? I mean, why would anyone logically choose Aang over Korra in a fight? Um, and there was a lot of responses. Apparently, I am on the wrong side of this um, on this debate.
It's tougher to stand alone, Chris. I think
Yeah,
what
that's
we'll
fine.
find. I'm not gonna take this angle whenever we do that video because that's not fun. I'm gonna be in full on like debate mode, at least to the best of my ability. But at least in this episode previewing it, it's one of those things where if you really tried to slap a bunch of pros and cons together, I think what you're going to come up with is it would be a very intense draw. There would be no winner.
Yeah,
There would only be
yeah,
loss and disappointment. Uh, But when we have that discussion as an episode, we won't think that way. That won't be an option. There will be no
Yeah.
draws. But yeah,
And
it's an
then,
interesting Facebook discussion.
yeah, and then I have a couple other ideas on some discussions we can have. But that will probably be the first, because that one's the most recent and fresh in my head. And also, we can draw from a lot of comments
Yes,
on that
good
also to
material.
support either one of
This,
our. Well, I guess to mostly support the Aang
which is good because
with
I
winning
need
the
that
fight.
kind of help. I'm not real good at debates. I tend to be a go with the flow kind of a podcast guy.
Yeah.
I tend to be the Kuruk
The
of
Korok
podcaster.
of no one wants to be the Korok of people.
I never really understood what he like. It says he is go with the flow, which like sort of politically I get, but most of the time I don't think of like these as sort of brazen, confident individuals. Those aren't usually go with the flow people. Like that part didn't mesh well in my head, but whatever. Like he would be more apt to like go out there and show off his strength to solve an issue or stop a war or whatever. It seems like, but maybe not. Maybe I'm reading
Yeah,
too
yeah,
much
I get
into
what
it.
you're saying.
It just didn't mesh personality wise with. But what different conversation for. I need to get more into the other parts of Avatar
Hmm.
canon
Yeah,
before I can defend that claim.
which
But
that's well, that's one of the discussions I want to have is pretty much ranking all the avatars we know.
how many do we actually know and have interactions with in this TV series? So not Korra, just from the Last
Oh,
Airbender.
well, and just this one. Um, four. See,
Because in my mind, I
there's
still want to
Aang.
kind of keep
No, there's
the two
five.
series separate.
There's five. There's five we learn
Juan and the
of
four
in
most recent.
well, Juan shows up in Korra.
Oh, that is Korra. That's right.
Yeah.
I was thinking that.
So when it comes, the new ones we learned of in Korra is just Korra and Juan, and this one we learned of five, which is well, there's Aang, Kyoshi. I'll go in order: Aang, Roku, Kyoshi, Korok, and Yang Chen.
And that was the previous Airbender, right? That's the cycle is
Yes.
air, water, earth, fire.
Yes. Yep.
Interesting. That'll be a good conversation. Um,
I almost feel like we need Korra in that
yeah,
just
just
because
I
it would
thought we had more
entice
exposure. Yeah, I thought we had more
entice
exposure.
some probably more viewership. I can already imagine the thumbnail of a bunch of avatars on there. Who's the best avatar?
You're gonna have to
Sure, we'll
create.
get
You're gonna have to create the
10% more.
thumbnail because I hate photo editing. So I'm gonna put that one on you.
I just do it on an app, and
Boom,
it's pretty
perfect.
good.
I got an idea. We'll rank the avatars one week. We'll go in blind. You'll rank yours. I'll rank mine. We'll come in blind. We'll present them to each other.
Mm,
And
yeah.
then when we realize that we have way different listings, that will spark our debate for the next one-off episode of who would win or who was the better, why, whatever. Like when I have Aang ranked first and you have Korra ranked first, or however it turns out, that'll lead to a better battle discussion, I think.
Mm. Would either be ranked first? They'll just have to wait. The 10
You'll
viewers have to wait until
you'll have to
whatever
watch
vague amount of time that we decide to do that.
whatever. Listen, I don't have much of a life, but Chris has kids. You know, he's got other things going on. Yeah, that sounds like a fun conversation at some point, and it'd be nice to break up regular episode rotation. I will find out what episode is the bad episode you're referring to, and that week we'll kind of we'll split that episode in half, and we'll get two
Okay.
out of it. That sounds like a decent idea. In the meantime, it has been pleasant. Thank you for calling over, and I will talk to you in a couple weeks.
All right.